The trees began where the road ended. Seraphina Vale stood at that edge for exactly 30 seconds. She counted them. 30 seconds was all she allowed herself. Enough time for fear to show up. Not enough time for it to win. Then she pulled the strap of her bag higher on her shoulder, tucked her brother's photograph deeper into her jacket pocket, and stepped into the forbidden forest. The light changed immediately. Outside, it had been a gray autumn morning, the kind that feels thin and tired. Inside the forest, the light was different, lower, softer, the color of old honey. The trees were enormous. Their trunks were wider than two people standing with arms spread, and their roots rose from the earth like the backs of buried creatures. The leaves overhead had turned the deep red and brown of autumn, and they blocked enough sky that the world inside the forest felt private, enclosed, like a secret. She had been warned about this place her whole life. Every child raised near the edge of pack territory knew the rules. Do not enter the Ashvale lands without permission. Do not speak to a wolf unless spoken to first. And above all else, never, under any reason, walk into Veyrath Forest. The Forbidden Forest, the place that had no map, the place from which people did not return. Seraphina knew all of this. She walked anyway. Her brother Eli was 17 years old and had been missing for 3 days. She had knocked on every door. She had spoken to the pack border guards, who looked at her with flat eyes and said they had seen nothing. She had waited and hoped and prayed in the way that people pray when they have already stopped believing in easy answers. And then, late last night, a woman in the village had pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand and whispered, "He went into the forest. I saw him. I am sorry." So here she was, walking into the one place she had been told would swallow her whole. The path, if it could be called that, was uneven and covered in fallen leaves. The roots reached across the ground, like they were trying to slow her down. She moved carefully, watching where she placed her feet, holding her flashlight, even though the strange honey-colored light made it mostly unnecessary. The forest was quiet, in a way that felt alive, not empty, listening. She had been walking for about 40 minutes when she first heard it. Footsteps, not her own. She stopped. The sound stopped too, a half-second later, as if whatever was behind her had not expected her to pause so suddenly. She did not turn around right away. She stood still and listened. The forest offered her nothing but its own breathing. The low movement of wind through high branches, the distant sound of a bird she could not name. She kept walking. So did the footsteps. This time, when she stopped, she turned around. He was standing between two ancient oak trees, half in shadow, watching her. He was very tall, taller than anyone she had seen before, with broad shoulders and dark hair, and eyes that caught the low forest light in a way that no human eyes should. He was still, completely still, the way a mountain is still. He made no move toward her. He made no move at all. He simply stood there, arms at his sides, and watched her with an expression she could not read. She had never seen Alpha King Kalen Ashvale in person, but she knew who he was. Everyone near the pack borders knew. He was the ruler of 3 territories, the man who had ended the border wars, the man whose name was spoken in pack law the way a king's name is carved into stone, with weight, with permanence, with a little bit of fear. She understood, in that moment, that she was in serious trouble. She took a slow breath. "I am looking for my brother," she said. Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. "His name is Eli Vale. He is 17, brown hair, about this tall." She held her hand up to indicate height. "He has been missing for 3 days. I have reason to believe he came into this forest." The Alpha King said nothing. He simply looked at her. His expression did not change. He did not reach for her, or threaten her, or wave her back the way she had expected. He just stood there in the shadow of those 2 great trees, watching her with those impossible eyes, and said nothing at all. She waited a moment, then she turned back around and kept walking. She heard his footsteps resume behind her. She did not look back again. Something told her that looking back would be the wrong move, that this strange, silent man behind her had his own rules she did not yet understand, and that the best thing she could do was keep moving forward, and trust that he would have stopped her already, if stopping her had been his intention. The forest grew denser as she moved deeper into it. The path curved in ways she could not predict. Twice, She was almost certain she had walked in a circle, and twice she corrected herself by watching the way the light moved. The forest was playing games. She paid attention and did not play back. Then the path opened into a small clearing, and she stopped cold. The clearing looked exactly like the front room of her childhood home. Not a copy of it, the actual room. The cracked wooden floor, the low table, the window with the pale curtain. And there, sitting in the chair where her mother used to sit, was her mother, looking just as she had before she died, looking up at Serafina with soft eyes and an expression full of love and grief. Serafina's heart cracked open. Her feet moved forward on their own, one step, then another. Her throat was tight, her eyes were burning. Behind her, from very close, closer than he had been before, came a small sound. Not a word, just a sound, low and brief, like someone clearing their throat, like a signal. She stopped. She made herself stop and breathe. And in that breath, in that single moment of stillness, she looked at the room again, really looked, and she saw what her heart had not wanted to see. The floor was too clean. The curtain moved, but there was no window behind it. The figure in the chair was not breathing. It was not her mother. It was the forest. She pressed her eyes shut for a moment, let the grief pass through her like a cold wave, and then opened them again. She stepped around the clearing's edge and back onto the real path. Her hands were shaking. She put them in her pockets and kept walking. The second time the forest tested her, it was simpler and worse. The path crossed a narrow bridge over a ravine. The bridge was made of old rope and worn wooden planks, and it swayed slightly, even in the still air. The ravine below was deep. She could not see the bottom. She was, and always had been, very afraid of heights. She stood at the start of the bridge for a long time, long enough that she became aware of the Alpha King standing a few steps behind her. She did not look at him. She put her hand on the rope rail, felt it tremble under her fingers, and began to cross. She focused on the planks directly in front of her feet. One, then the next. The bridge swayed. Her knees felt weak. Halfway across, she made the mistake of looking up, and the movement of the trees against the sky made her feel dizzy and tilted, like the world was about to pour her off its edge. Then she heard his footsteps on the bridge behind her, slow, even, heavy enough that the bridge moved differently, less like a frightening thing and more like a firm thing. Something about those steady footsteps behind her settled her. She fixed her eyes back on the planks and crossed the rest of the bridge without stopping. When she reached the other side, she let out a breath she had not known she was holding. She did not say thank you. She did not think she needed to. She simply kept walking, and he followed. By the time night began to fall inside the forest, the light dropping from honey gold to deep purple, she had been walking for hours. Her feet ached. Her bag felt twice as heavy as it had at the start. She had not found Eli, and the fear that had been sitting quietly behind her ribs all day was beginning to press forward. She sat down on a large moss-covered stone near the base of an old tree. She pulled the photograph from her pocket. It was the two of them, Eli and herself, from last winter. He was laughing at something off camera. He had their mother's eyes. She pressed the photograph flat against her chest and sat very still. She heard him stop a few feet away. She did not look up. She was not in the mood for silence, and she was not in the mood for conversation either. She was in the mood to find her brother and go home, but she sat, and she breathed, and she let the quiet forest night settle around her. After a long time, a very long time, she heard him sit down, not close to her, across from her, at a respectful distance. She glanced up. He was there, in the purple dark, watching her with those eyes that caught the last of the light. He looked, she thought, like a man who was carrying something he had long ago stopped expecting anyone to help him carry. The silence stretched between them. Then he spoke. "East," he said. His voice was low and even, like the sound the forest made when the wind moved through it. She looked up fully. "Your brother," he said. "He is east of here. About a mile." He walked into one of the old ward traps, a circle that holds whatever steps inside it. "He cannot break it from within. He is not hurt." She stared at him. "You knew this whole time?" He looked at her steadily. "I needed to see what kind of person walks into a forbidden forest for someone else." "And?" she said. He held her gaze. Still deciding, he said quietly. But there was something in his expression, very small, very carefully held, that made her feel he had already decided and simply was not ready to say it yet. She stood up. "Take me east," she said. He stood too, and this time, for the first time, he did not walk behind her. He walked beside her. They found Eli in a small hollow between 3 wide trees. He was sitting inside a circle of faintly glowing light, his arms wrapped around his knees, his face pale and tired. When he saw Serafina, his expression broke open, relief and embarrassment, and the specific expression of a younger sibling who has done something very foolish and knows it. "Sarah," he said. "Eli," she said. She sat at the edge of the glowing circle and pressed her palm flat against the light. It pushed back, warm and firm. She could not reach through. The Alpha King stood at the edge of the hollow. He studied the circle for a moment. Then he moved to a certain point along its edge, pressed 2 fingers against the light in a precise way, and said a single word that Serafina did not recognize. The glow flickered, then it faded, then it was gone. Eli stumbled out and into his sister's arms. She held him tightly and said nothing for a while, because there was nothing to say yet. He was safe. That was the only sentence that mattered. The Alpha King stepped back. He gave them space, standing at the edge of the hollow with his back half turned, looking at the trees. It was such a small gesture, stepping back, turning away, giving them a moment that was theirs. But it told Serafina something she had not expected to learn about him tonight. It told her that underneath all that silence and authority and impossible stillness, there was someone who understood what it meant to care about another person. Someone who had done it himself, once, and had not yet forgotten what it felt like. He led them out of the forest. The path back was faster than the path in. The trees seemed to allow it, as if the forest had decided they had passed some test and could now be released. By the time they reached the tree line, the sky was beginning to lighten in the east. The first pale edge of dawn was appearing above the hills. At the tree line, the Alpha King stopped. He stood at the last tree, one hand resting against its bark, and watched them step out onto the road. Eli, exhausted and grateful, looked at the tall, silent man behind his sister and wisely said nothing. Serafina turned to face him. In the early morning light, outside the forest, he looked different, less like a force of nature, and more like a person. A tired person, she thought. A person who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. "You broke my law," he said. "My brother was in your forest," she answered. He was quiet for a moment, then the corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, but the memory of one, something that had not been used in a long time but was not entirely forgotten. "Come back," he said, "through the front gate, when you are ready." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that an order?" "An invitation," he said, and then, after the smallest pause, "From me." She looked at him for a moment, then she nodded, once. She took Eli's arm, and they walked down the road together, away from the trees. She did not look back, but she felt him standing there, watching, the way you feel the warmth of a fire even after you have stepped away from it. Eli waited until they were well down the road before speaking. "Who is he?" he asked quietly. "Someone I did not expect," she said. Eli looked at her sideways. "You are going back, aren't you?" She did not answer right away. She thought about the forest and the honey-colored light, and the steady sound of footsteps behind her when she had been most afraid. She thought about one word spoken in the dark, east. She thought about an invitation that had not sounded like any invitation she had ever received before. Quiet, careful, offered like something precious rather than expected. "Yes," she said finally. "I think I am." Eli nodded, as if this was the only reasonable answer, and they walked on, into the early morning, into the thin gray light of a new day, a day that felt, for the first time in a long time, like it was pointing towards something rather than away from it. Behind them, at the edge of the forbidden forest, the Alpha King stood for a long moment in the last of the dark. Then he turned and walked back into the trees, and the forest, for once, was quiet around him, in a way that felt less like loneliness and more like waiting.